The council chamber was a hall of stone and shadow, its walls hung with torn banners that no longer stir with pride. Eryndor sat at the long oaken table as voices clashed around him. Lords demanding grain, generals demanding men, priests demanding obedience to a fate that had long since withered. He had scarcely heard a word. His mind still burned with the memory of silver hair and firelight, of the prophecy etched in ink older than kings. Fire and shadow bound together. When the council adjourned, he rose without ceremony and strode through the citadel's winding corridors until the voices faded behind him. His boots carried him to the eastern wing, where few dared linger after dark. The ember's glow pulsed faintly through the walls, a reminder that Avalon's heart still beat, though faint, fragile, fading. She was waiting for him. Lyanna stood at a narrow window, her hood drawn, her form cloaked in black that blended with the stone. She did not turn as he approached, but her voice was low and steady. "You came." Eryndor halted a pace behind her, hands clenched at his sides. "I should not have." "No," she said softly. "You should not." Silence stretched, broken only by the whisper of wind through cracked glass. At last, Eryndor asked, "Why are you here? Why risk your life, your blood, your throne, to walk into your enemy's citadel?" She turned then, her eyes catching the dim glow. "Because Avalon's fate is tied to my own. If it falls, so too will Kerith. The Ember is not yours to guard or ours to claim. It belongs to us both or to neither." Eryndor's jaw tightened. "You expect me to believe a Kerithai heir would risk everything for Avalon's survival?" "No," she admitted, stepping closer. "I expect you to believe the truth when it burns in your chest the same as it does in mine." The ember stirred her words, a restless fire beneath his ribs. He hated how it betrayed him, how it leapt toward her like a starving flame seeking kindling. He turned sharply, striding down the hall. "If anyone finds you here, you'll be executed before dawn, and I will not stop them." "Then don't," she said, following at his heels. "But if you mean to cast me to the gallows, at least hear what I know. The Ember cannot survive as it is. The Codex spoke of fire and shadow. That is why I came, to tell you what your priests will never dare admit." Her insistence gnawed at him. He stopped at a hidden door, half buried behind a crumbling tapestry. With a glance down the corridor, he pushed it open and ushered her inside. The chamber beyond was small, forgotten, a vault once used by scholars to store maps of lost realms. Dust thickened the air, but was quiet, safe. He shut the door and turned to face her. "Speak," he demanded. Lyanna pulled back her hood, silver hair tumbling like moonlight. The ember was forged in balance. Fire from the gods, shadow from the depths. It was meant to be shared, not hoarded. When your ancestors stole it, they severed that balance. That is why it fades. Not because Avalon weakens, but because it burns alone. Her words pierced him. Alone. The word echoed deeper than he wished. "And you claim Kerith is the missing balance?" he asked. She met his gaze without flinching. "Not Kerith. Me." The silence between them thickened, charged, dangerous. Eryndor's throat felt dry. "You expect me to accept that our kingdom's salvation depends on trusting the daughter of my enemy?" "No," she whispered. "I expect you to feel it." The ember roared in answer, searing his veins. He staggered back a step, his hand braced against the wall. Every heartbeat thundered like fire meeting shadow. He hated it. He craved it. "You toy with treason," he rasped. "So do you," she replied. The truth of it left them both raw. For a moment, neither moved. Then Lyanna reached into her cloak and drew forth a small satchel. From within, she revealed a shard of obsidian, etched with runes that glimmered faintly like embers in ash. "This was my mother's," she said, her voice hushed. "It is all that remains of Kerith's bond to the Ember. Alone it is nothing, but together," she held out to him. Eryndor hesitated, every instinct warning against it, yet his hand lifted, trembling, and when his fingers brushed the stone, the ember within his chest flared. Heat seared through him, not pain but power, wild and alive. Lyanna's breath caught. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the air between them throbbed with something undeniable. The shard blazed, brighter than any torch. Eryndor tore his hand away, gasping, the glow dimming at once. He turned from her, every muscle taut. This cannot be. If anyone sees what just happened, it will damn us both. Then we keep it hidden, she said. You would ask me to betray my kingdom? No. Her voice softened, almost breaking. I ask you to save it. The words lodged in his chest, heavier than any oath. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to cast her into the dungeons, to silence her lies. But the fire within him said otherwise. And so, against every instinct, he nodded once. Then we keep the secret. Lyanna exhaled, relief mingling with something else, something unspoken. For the first time, Eryndor realized how close they stood. His pulse raced, not from fear, but from the gravity of what bound them. A secret, a bond, a fire neither could deny. And behind it all, the veil of danger. The great hall of Avalon stank of fear. Once it had been a place of light, where golden banners rippled above feasts that stretched long into night. Now the chandeliers hung dark, their wax spent. The banners were moth-eaten and heavy with dust. Lords sat in sullen clusters along the benches, their faces pale in the glow of guttering torches. At the high table, Eryndor listened in silence as the council argued over the kingdom's slow death. The granaries are empty, Lord Edric snarled, slamming his fist against the wood. Our fields are barren, our rivers poisoned by Caerta's filth. If the Ember still holds any power, why not unleash it and burn their armies to ash before they march further north? A murmur of assent rippled through the hall. Archpriest Kale shook his head, his thin lips pursed. The Ember is sacred. It cannot be wielded so crudely. To unchain it is to tempt destruction. And yet it fades. Another lord spat. We star while your priests whisper riddles. Perhaps Avalon's salvation lies not in waiting for the gods, but in seizing power where we may find it. Eyes turned toward Eryndor then, the prince who was bound to the Ember by blood and prophecy. What say you, Highness? Lord Edric pressed. Will you sit idle while your people waste away, or will you act? Eryndor's knuckles whitened against the armrest. The Ember flared faintly in his chest, restless, listening. Before he could speak, the doors at the far end of the hall burst open. A soldier stumbled through, armor dented, cloak streaked with blood. He fell to one knee. My lords, my prince, the western watchtowers burn. Rebels march beneath a crimson banner. They call themselves the Ashborn. The hall erupted. Voices shouted, some in fury, others in fear. Rebellion within Avalon itself. Eryndor rose, his voice cutting to the din. How many? Hundreds, the soldier gasped. Perhaps more. They claim the Ember belongs to the people, not the crown. A chill swept through the hall. Archpriest Kale hissed heretics. But Eryndor's thoughts raced elsewhere. The Ember's power faltering, famine spreading, rebellion rising, and hidden in the shadows of the citadel, the one person who might hold the key to balance. Lyanna. He could not think of her here, not with a dozen eyes watching. Yet her presence burned in the back of his mind, as relentless as the Ember itself. That night, he found her in the forgotten vault where they had last spoken. She stood at the map table, studying parchment strewn with faded ink. At the sound of his approach, she glanced up, her expression sharp. You heard, she said, the Ashborn. He closed the door behind him. They rise within our own borders. If the kingdom turns upon itself. It already has, Lyanna interrupted, voice low. You feel it as keenly as I. The people no longer fear your priests or trust your lords. Hunger makes men desperate, and desperation makes rebels. Eryndor leaned heavily against the table, dragging a hand through his hair. If they breach the city walls, they'll burn everything. The Ember, Avalon, all of it. Her gaze softened then, though her words were iron. Perhaps that is what they seek, to cleanse what is broken and begin anew. He turned on her, anger sparking. You speak like one of them. No, she said firmly. I speak like someone who knows what it is to watch a kingdom rot from within. Caerta is no better than Avalon, but at least I see it clearly. Do you? The word struck deep. He wanted to deny her, to cling to loyalty, to duty, to the oaths carved into his bones since boyhood. But the ember of truth flickered behind her eyes, and he could not look away. "You risk much speaking so," he murmured. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. "So, do you meeting me here?" Their gazes held, taut as a drawn bowstring. Eryndor broke it first, pacing the chamber. "The rebellion will force my hand. The lords want the ember unleashed. The priests forbid it. If I defy either, Avalon fractures further. And if you obey either," Lyanna countered, "Avalon falls all the same." Silence lingered, heavy as storm clouds. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You know what must be done. Balance. Fire and shadow together. You and I." The ember surged, a heat that curled through his veins and drew him toward her like a tide. His breath caught. "If we are discovered, then we burn," she whispered. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between them, the flicker of torchlight on her silver hair, the fire pounding in his chest, the scent of parchment and dust and danger. He wanted to close the distance, to taste the treason on her lips. But a knock shattered the moment. Eryndor whirled, shoving her back into shadow as the door creaked open. A young squire stepped in, bowing quickly. "My prince, the council summons you. They mean to march against the Ashborn at dawn." Eryndor forced his voice steady. "Tell them I come." The boy hurried out, the door thudding shut behind him. When Eryndor turned, Lyanna was already pulling her hood low, her face unreadable. "Go," she said softly. "Play their game. But remember, rebellion does not end with swords. It ends when fire and shadow stand together." And then she was gone, vanishing into the dark like a ghost. Eryndor remained, heart-hammering, torn between the kingdom that demanded his obedience and the woman who demanded his soul. The streets of Avalon's lower ward reeked of smoke and despair. Eryndor pulled his cloak tighter as he moved to the narrow alleys, boots crunching over frost and ash. He should not have been here, not alone, not without guard or banner. But the council's eyes followed him like vultures in the citadel, and the ember's fire within him had grown restless, urging him outward, downward, toward the people his lords claimed to serve. Toward her. Lyanna moved like a shadow ahead of him, her silver hair hidden beneath a hood, her steps silent even on broken cobblestone. She did not belong here any more than he did, yet she moved as if she had always known the labyrinth of Avalon's underbelly. They stopped before a crumbling tavern, its windows blackened, its door hanging by a single hinge. Lyanna slipped inside first, and he followed. The air was thick with damp and mildew. A single candle guttered on a warped table, casting the faces of 3 cloaked figures into shallow light. Rebels, judging by the red cloth knotted at their arms. "You came?" one of them rasped, eyeing Lyanna warily. "I said I would," she replied coolly. "Tell us." The rebel leaned forward, eyes darting toward Eryndor. "The Ashborn grow. The people hunger, and your lords do nothing. We march at dawn for the northern gate. If the crown does not yield the ember, Avalon burns." Eryndor's jaw tightened. "And you think fire will feed your children? That steel will heal barren fields." The rebel's eyes flashed. Better to die free than starve in chains. Tension hung like a blade between them. Eryndor wanted to argue, to command, to remind them he was heir to the throne they threatened. But Lyanna's hand brushed lightly against his sleeve, a warning, a plea for silence. She spoke instead. "If the ember falls into rebel hands, Avalon is lost. If it remains with the priests and lords, Avalon is also lost. There must be another path." The rebels muttered among themselves, uncertain. Before they could answer, the tavern door slammed open. Soldiers stormed in, armored and armed, torches casting violent shadows across the room. "Traitors!" one bellowed. Eryndor barely had time to draw his sword before steel clashed against steel. The rebels scattered, one falling to a blade, the others vanishing into the night. Lyanna moved like fire and smoke, slipping past a soldier's strike and pulling Eryndor with her through a back passage. They fled into the maze of alleys, torches flaring behind them, shouts echoing. "Here!" Lyanna hissed, dragging him down a stairwell into a half-collapsed cellar. She pulled the door shut, plunging them into darkness. Only their breathing filled the silence, ragged and quick. Above, boots thundered past. Eryndor pressed against the wall, chest heaving, sword still slick with blood. Lyanna leaned close, her face inches from his in the dim glow of moonlight, filtering through a crack in the boards. "You're reckless," she whispered. "So are you," he shot back, voice low. "Meeting rebels? You could have been killed." Her eyes glimmered in the half-light. "So could you, prince or not. Avalon's enemies care little for crowns." He swallowed, the ember in his chest burning hotter than it should. He should step away, put distance between them. Remember who she was, an enemy's daughter, a secret too dangerous to keep. But the space between them seemed to collapse, drawn tighter with every breath. "Lyanna!" His voice was a warning, a plea. "Eryndor!" Her whisper was softer, almost surrender. The world outside vanished. The rebellion, the priests, the weight of oaths and crowns, all dissolved beneath the fire that leapt between them. And then he kissed her. It was not gentle. It was desperate, stolen, a breaking the walls long built. Her lips met his with equal hunger, a spark igniting into flame. His hand found the curve of her cheek, hers tangled in the fabric of his cloak. The ember flared within him, not in rage or duty, but in fierce, aching longing. For a heartbeat, it felt as though Avalon itself lived again, its dying heart beating through them both. When they broke apart, their foreheads rested together, breath mingling in the shadows. "This is madness," he whispered. "Yes," she breathed, lips brushing his. And yet, he could not stop. He kissed her again, slower this time, as though memorizing the shape of treason. Above, the soldiers' shouts faded into the distance. But Eryndor knew danger had not passed. It had only deepened. For now, the greatest threat to Avalon was not the rebels or Kareth or even the failing Ember. It was this fire in the shadows.